there's just so many moving parts in all of this in terms of logistics and timing and everything, and it's just someone can show some interest, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to call you back like Coach Hug said, and it's going to work for them. Not everybody is looking to fill the 27 games.
Yeah.
That's where everybody is kind of misunderstood on this. We want to play, and we want our guys to play, and like he said, we owe it to them, but that's not necessarily the case with everybody else across the country. If it doesn't make sense for them and their AD isn't on board, or if their state has certain guidelines, and a lot of things got to align for it to happen, and a lot of people will forget about the testing as well. Yeah. I mean, we have a certain testing guidelines for the Big 12, so replacing a game on short notice, it's got to work with testing as well.
Real quick, last thing for me, when you found out at 10 o'clock, whatever it was, Tuesday, that Robert Morris wasn't coming, whatever time it was, how long did it take you before you finally got North Texas to say yeah?
Well, I was up late, obviously, till about 2 o'clock in the morning, shooting out emails, shooting out, leaving voicemails. I hate calling people late at night, but everybody in my position across the country is probably in the same boat. So you're looking across the postponements and everything else and seeing logistically, first you look at geography in terms of who's open around you, what makes sense. So you don't hear a lot. I didn't hear a lot from many people until Wednesday morning. Now, North Texas, I have a relationship. He used to be with Baylor, so he reached out to me mid-afternoon. I mean, we had several offers out on the table, but like Coach Hugg said, I mean, there's a lot of people just waiting to hear from their administration, so they're in hold, they're in limbo, and in terms of my job, I work for the greatest coach in the country, not only from X's and O's and wins, but I can get an answer from him within 5 minutes. So it's easy for me. But, he reached out and, like he said, originally we wanted to play right away. And I think that's beneficial to play right away, not knowing, okay, is Richmond, they still got to test out and who knows what could happen with that game. And your window starts closing.
Yeah. So
if you want to get all your games in, you don't want to push games back to mid next week, not knowing whether Richmond's going to happen, whether you're going to have to replace that one, and it just domino effect.
Go keep some blank contracts handy.
They're ready to go. I push on the administration to get them out as soon as possible because I don't want it to fall through. And I mean, we didn't release today until we knew exactly that they, all their tests came back negative, and the contract is signed, and so you're nervous until it all happens, and they get on a plane and everything's a go.
Cody Nesper.
Hi, Josh. Just first, thanks for taking some questions, and then I was just wondering what kind of preparation work did you have to do before this season? Because I'm sure the possibility the games were going to get canceled was very real. I was just wondering, did you put together a short list of teams that as possible replacements, or just what all did you do?
Well, the longer you're in this business, the more contacts you have. Obviously, people personally are going to get back to you. Those that you don't have a relationship with are probably you're less likely to hear from. So the longer you're in this business, the more people you know, and the quicker you can get some things done in that regard. But like when they shortened the season and moved it back 2 weeks, I argued it didn't make sense. If you want to limit the games to 27, okay, but move the season up 2 weeks so there's more room to make adjustments. So now you're on a shorter window trying to pack games in, and you want to do it safely, and you want to have the right team and the right opponent and do right by your student athletes, but shortening the season to fit in a certain amount of games didn't seem like the right answer to me.
Kevin Kinder.
Hey, Josh, I know in football there's a national database, as it were, of teams with open dates looking for games, things like that. it sounds more like this is a grassroots thing on the basketball side. Is there room for something like that? Over like what a site like D1 Blogspot has?
There's guys out there that are trying to put something together. Kevin Paga with Michigan State has a program out there that he's developing, and I think that's along the lines of what you're looking at for football, and that's out there. More than anything, I use scheduling posts. You can put your posting online that a lot of coaches have access to. Hey, we're looking for this date. We're looking for that date. We're looking for something regional. So that's the first thing I do is go to that scheduling board and start looking at who's available, who wants something. So like I said, there's a lot of things, even though that they say they want a game, right away, it doesn't mean it's going to happen. It can make sense on paper and travel wise and everything else, but there's so many factors that go into it that it's not necessarily going to happen. And I have a lot of schools that just come back and say, you guys are just too hard to prepare for. And that's the reality of it. I mean, they don't want to come in here on short notice and play. So with Richmond on Sunday, I didn't necessarily want to play a game, and I don't think Coach Huggins wanted to play a game right away, but playing an early tip on Friday gives us a little more time to prepare for Richmond. But it's going to be a heck of an opponent, and we're looking forward to the challenge. It's not ideal, but that's the world we live in right now.
Mike Casaza.
Hey, Josh, what's up?
How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. I have a question for you. It kind of relates to football a little bit, but when they were getting their non-conference game in early, the team they were playing had issues with testing and tracing. So they made Eastern Kentucky adhere to the Big 12 standards for testing because the other conferences are different. Do you have to do anything like that in non-conference games or arranging a game like this to ensure that it's up to a certain standard?
Yeah, they have to sign off with their doctors on our testation policy. So they got to go. Big 12 sets a non-conference, which it's the rules we play for conference. We have certain guidelines in terms of testing that those non-conference teams have to follow. So like I said earlier, if you grab a team that might be on their way to, play someone locally, and it makes sense for them to get a check and a guarantee and come play the Mountaineers, it doesn't mean it's going to happen if they haven't done the proper testing in the last 7 days.
Okay, and then we're talking about North Texas here, but by the way, the team you play on Sunday had a pause too. I imagine this is especially hectic for you. Were you also, prior to their reinstating things, looking at ways to possibly replace or adjust for not being able to play Sunday?
You're always, keeping things in mind. I'm making notes of who's dropping and like I said, I had an interview a couple weeks ago. I just hope my phone doesn't, ring. I was enjoying my evening on Tuesday with my family, and I saw Hugs come across my phone, so I knew something happened. So I'd rather not, but certainly we make notes and try to have someone available. But it's like playing whack-a-mole. You're trying to you put out one fire and on to the next, and they just keep on coming. So I mean, you got to be flexible, and it's the world we live in. It's not the most it's a pretty stressful time to be an ops guy, but it's rewarding in the same fact where you're putting games in front of guys that worked really hard all summer to be here and have that right to play.
And one more, if you don't mind. Do you have caps for what you're allowed to offer teams, or can you exceed if the opponent is particularly appealing? Like, how does that go? How are you enticing and signing teams?
Well, I mean, you make enough calls and you gain enough information through other ops guys, especially at our level, to know what the market price is. So I have an idea of what I can pay market price, but I'm not going to get into any of those details. But certain teams you don't want to pay for a team to come in and ruin your net as well. So I try to target certain level of teams and teams that will get something out of. And this is probably a little heavier team than we want to play, and it would have certainly been better to play on Thursday afternoon or today rather than play on Friday and have a short notice for Richmond. But you take what is available, and we're excited for the opportunity.
All right, thanks.
We'll go to Justin Jackson.
Hey, Josh, how you doing?
How you doing, Justin?
Hey, a couple weeks ago, I think it was, we're talking about we're talking about difficulties of scheduling. A couple weeks ago, Notre Dame coach Mike Bray actually went to social media. I'm sure you saw it and tried to advertise to get a game. I'm guessing you guys haven't gotten quite to that point yet, but I'm kind of curious. And you guys obviously asked questions of opponents. What kind of questions are they asking you? Like, do they wonder about how many fans you guys are letting in, and things of that nature?
Well, the first thing, like I said earlier, is testing. That's the first question they have, and they go to, a lot of coaches don't know what they've done, off the top of their head. So they got to make a call to their doctors or their trainers in charge and figure that out. But travel, they do ask about fans, but more than anything, it's got to make sense for them and their administration for them to pull the trigger and play a game on short notice like that.
We'll go to Joe Mercado.
Josh, you kind of touched on this in your comments to Mike earlier, but how do you guys balance the getting an opponent versus an opponent that's going to help you in the net, and how do you kind of balance those two parts of it?
Well, I wasn't too concerned about the net in this regard. More often, I was more concerned about timing. Perfect scenario, by morning I would have a team to replace Robert Morris, and we'd have played the game on Wednesday regardless. But that's far-fetched to think we could pull that off in that short of notice. So the fact that North Texas reached out and thought they could be here on Thursday afternoon, considering we had a women's game, which today, this evening. So logistics and gym time and everything else come into it as well. But they were very adamant that they could come, they could get here. They had no issues with testing in terms of what they were required to do, and they felt good about where they were. So confidence and dealing with the head coach and not dealing with a direct operations guy that's got to answer to 4 or 5 people. And like I said earlier, working for Coach Huggins, he gives me a lot of flexibility to do my job, and he's quick to pull the trigger on something when it can go down. We don't mess around and get it done.
Josh, I think that's all the questions today. I appreciate your time on short notice, and thank you for joining us on the Media Zoom.
Thank you, guys.
Reminder